I was 30 years old when my husband died. Or at least, that's what they told me. The call came on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were when David usually worked late at the warehouse, and I'd been making his favourite chicken soup for when he got home. The police officer's voice on the phone was professionally sympathetic as he explained there had been an accident. A truck. The highway. They needed me to come identify the body. I dropped the ladle. It clattered against the tile floor, splashing broth across my bare feet, but I didn't feel it. I didn't feel anything except the sudden crushing weight of a world that had just stopped making sense. The funeral was a blur of black clothes and wilted flowers. David's parents, Robert and Linda, wailed at the graveside with such theatrical grief that people kept bringing them tissues and water. I stood there dry-eyed, numb, wondering why I couldn't cry, wondering what was wrong with me that I felt so hollow instead of shattered. Maybe it was because somewhere deep down I already knew the truth. I just wasn't ready to see it yet. The debt started appearing almost immediately. First, it was the credit cards, $20,000 worth of charges I'd never seen statements for. Then the personal loans, the gambling debts, the money borrowed from loan sharks with names I didn't recognize, and interest rates that made my stomach turn. By the time I'd sorted through all of it, I was staring at nearly $200,000 in debt that I had somehow become responsible for. Robert sat in my living room, his face grave as he explained it to me. You were his wife, Maya. These debts are legally yours now. It's your responsibility to make this right, to preserve David's honor. But I didn't know about any of this, I said, my voice small and confused. He never told me about... He protected you from it, Linda interrupted, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. He didn't want you to worry, poor boy. He was trying to fix it all himself. And now look what's happened. She said it like it was somehow my fault. Like if I'd been a better wife, David wouldn't have been stressed enough to drive carelessly, wouldn't have died, wouldn't have left this massive crater of debt for me to fill. So I started filling it. I took on a second job, then a third. I worked mornings at a coffee shop, afternoons cleaning houses, evenings doing data entry from home. I slept 4 hours a night if I was lucky. My back ached constantly from bending over other people's toilets, my hands were raw from industrial cleaning chemicals, and my eyes burned from staring at computer screens in the dark. And through it all, I took care of Robert and Linda. They'd sold their house 6 months before David died, claiming they needed to downsize. They moved into my spare bedroom temporarily, just until they found something suitable. That temporary arrangement became permanent very quickly, along with the expectation that I would wait on them hand and foot. Maya, I need my blood pressure medication, Robert would call from his recliner, barely looking up from his television show. The medication would be 3 feet away on the side table, but I was expected to stop whatever I was doing and bring it to him. Maya, this soup is too salty, Linda would say, pushing her bowl away with a grimace. Make another batch. And this time, try not to ruin it. Maya, the bathroom needs cleaning. Maya, my laundry needs doing. Maya, why haven't you vacuumed today? I did it all without complaint. I told myself they were grieving, that they'd lost their son, that they deserved compassion. I told myself this was what David would have wanted, that I was honoring his memory by taking care of his parents. I told myself a lot of lies in that first year. The truth started revealing itself in small ways. A comment from Robert about how I should be grateful they took me in when I had nothing to offer. Linda mentioning casually that David had always been too good for me, that he'd married down. The way they spoke about David himself, their supposedly beloved dead son. With a strange coldness when they thought I wasn't listening. At least he finally did something useful, I heard Robert mutter to Linda one night. Shh, Linda hissed back. She'll hear you. I stood frozen in the hallway, holding a basket of their clean laundry, trying to make sense of what I'd just heard. What did that mean? How could dying be useful? But I pushed it away. I was exhausted. I was stressed. I was probably misunderstanding. I went back to work, back to scrubbing floors and entering data and making their meals exactly how they liked them. I remembered the early days, before the debt, before the death. I remembered being 24 years old and so in love I couldn't see straight. David had been charming, funny, always ready with a compliment or a surprise date. We'd met in college, both of us business majors, both of us determined to build good lives. There had been another girl back then, Jessica. Beautiful Jessica with her glossy black hair and her expensive clothes and her obvious crush on David. She used to hang around our study group, finding excuses to touch his arm, to laugh at his jokes, to lean in close when he was explaining accounting concepts. David always brushed her off. "You're the only one I want, Maya," he'd tell me, pulling me close and kissing my forehead. "Don't worry about Jessica. She's just a friend from class." Then Jessica had disappeared from school one day, dropped out suddenly, no explanation. I'd asked David about it once, and he'd shrugged. No idea. Maybe she transferred. Who cares? I'd let it go. Why would I worry about a girl who'd had a crush on my boyfriend when my boyfriend had chosen me? Now I wished I'd asked more questions. About a lot of things. 14 months after David's death, I was scrubbing Linda's bathroom floor when my phone buzzed with a notification. Some social media algorithm had suggested a video to me, something about luxury travel. I almost ignored it. I hadn't had a vacation in years, couldn't imagine ever affording one again. But something made me click on it. The video showed a pool party at an expensive resort in Thailand. Beautiful people in designer swimwear, bottles of champagne, that aggressive tropical sunshine that only exists in expensive places. I was about to close it when I saw him. David, my dead husband, very much alive, laughing as he raised a glass to the camera. And next to him, her arm draped possessively across his shoulders, was Jessica. I dropped my phone into the toilet. I fished it out with shaking hands, dried it frantically on my shirt, and watched the video again. And again. And again. Trying to convince myself I was hallucinating, that grief had finally broken my mind completely, that this couldn't possibly be real. But it was real. I could see his face clearly, hear his laugh in the audio. He had a tan. He looked relaxed, happy, healthier than I'd seen him in years. He looked like a man on permanent vacation, not like a man who'd been dead for 14 months. He looked like a man who'd never given a single thought to the wife he'd left behind to drown in his debts. I sat on the bathroom floor for a long time, my wet phone clutched in my hands, my mind racing through the implications. The fake death certificate, the closed casket funeral because the body was too damaged to view. Robert and Linda's strange comments, the debts that had appeared so quickly like they'd been waiting for exactly this moment. They'd known. All of them had known. David had faked his death to escape his debts, and his parents had helped him do it. And then they'd used me, worked me to the bone, treated me like their personal servant while their son lived it up in Thailand with his mistress. The rage that went through me then was like nothing I'd ever felt before. It burned away the numbness, the exhaustion, the guilt, the sad, dutiful acceptance. It burned away every lie I'd been telling myself about honor and family and doing the right thing. I pulled myself off the bathroom floor, walked downstairs and quit all 3 of my jobs. Then I called Marcus Chen. Marcus and I had gone to law school together, back before I'd dropped out to help David with his failing business ventures. Marcus had always been kind to me, had always treated me like I was smart and capable instead of just a pretty face on David's arm. We'd lost touch after I left school, but I still had his number. "Maya," he said when he answered, surprise clear in his voice. "Wow, it's been years. How are you?" "I need a lawyer," I said. "And I need someone I can trust. Are you available?" There was a pause. Then, "Tell me everything." I told him. All of it. The death, the debts, the servitude, the video. By the time I finished, my voice was steady and cold. "Jesus Christ," Marcus breathed. "Maya, this is massive fraud. Like serious prison time fraud. Do you still have access to any of David's accounts or documents? I have everything. I've been paying his debts for over a year. I have every statement, every bill, every piece of paperwork. Don't touch anything else. Don't let Robert and Linda know you suspect anything. Can you come to my office tomorrow? I'll be there. Over the next 2 months, Marcus worked quietly to build the case. He found David's new bank accounts in Thailand, traced money transfers, uncovered the fake death certificate, and the bribed official who'd issued it. He found the life insurance policy David had taken out 6 months before his supposed death, the one that had paid out to Robert and Linda. He found Jessica's involvement, the way she'd helped David set up his new identity, the apartment they'd rented together in Bangkok. Most importantly, he found proof that Robert and Linda had known from the beginning. Text messages between Linda and David, phone calls from Robert to lawyers in Thailand, money transfers to offshore accounts. They'd planned this together, all 3 of them. While I'd been scrubbing their toilets and working myself to exhaustion, they'd been laughing at me. "We've got them," Marcus said finally, spreading papers across his desk. "Fraud, conspiracy, insurance fraud, identity fraud, the list goes on. The DA is very interested in this case." "Very interested." "Good," I said. The rage had settled into something colder now, something patient and precise. "Let's burn it all down." Robert and Linda had no idea anything was wrong until the police showed up at the house. I was sitting in the living room calmly drinking tea when the officers came through the door with their warrant. "What's happening?" Linda shrieked, clutching at Robert's arm. "Maya, what did you do?" "Me." I set down my teacup carefully. "I didn't do anything. I've just been the good daughter-in-law, paying off my dead husband's debts and taking care of his grieving parents." "Exactly what you told me to do." Robert's face went pale. "Now, Maya, let's not be hasty." "Hasty?" I stood up, and something in my voice made the police officers look at me with respect. "I spent 14 months working 3 jobs to pay off debts your son deliberately created before faking his own death. 14 months cleaning your house and cooking your meals, and listening to you tell me what a disappointment I was. 14 months of believing I owed you something, that I owed him something, while he was drinking cocktails in Thailand with his mistress." "We didn't know," Linda started, but her voice was weak. "Don't lie to me," I said quietly. "Not anymore. I've seen the text messages. I've seen the money transfers. I know you helped him plan this. I know you've been receiving payments from him the entire time. I know everything." The colour drained from both their faces. "The really funny thing," I continued, "is that I would have forgiven the debt. If David had just come to me, told me he was in trouble, asked for help, I would have found a way. I loved him that much. But instead, you all decided I was easier to use than to respect. You decided I was too stupid to ever figure it out, and that was your mistake." The police arrested them both. The charges were extensive: conspiracy to commit fraud, accessory to identity fraud, insurance fraud, obstruction of justice. Marcus had been thorough. 3 weeks later, they arrested David and Jessica in Bangkok. Interpol had been very cooperative, especially when they understood the scope of the fraud. The video I'd found had been just the beginning. Marcus's investigators found dozens more. David and Jessica living their best life on money that should have been used to pay his debts. The trial took 6 months. I sat in that courtroom every single day, watching David squirm on the witness stand, watching Robert and Linda try to pretend they'd been deceived too, watching Jessica cry and claim she'd been manipulated. The prosecutor was a woman about my age named Sarah Gonzalez, and she was merciless. She laid out every detail of the conspiracy, every lie, every manipulation. She showed the jury the debt statements I'd paid, the work schedules I'd maintained, the medical records showing my physical and mental exhaustion. Then she showed them the pictures of David and Jessica in Thailand, living in luxury. The defendant didn't just fake his death, Sarah told the jury in her closing argument. He murdered his wife's future. He took a woman who loved him, who trusted him, and he turned her into a slave to pay for his crimes while he vacationed in paradise. And his parents, who should have protected their daughter-in-law, helped him do it. They all gambled that Maya Chen was too kind, too trusting, too beaten down to ever fight back. She turned to look at me then, and I saw the fierce satisfaction in her eyes. They gambled wrong. David got 8 years, Jessica got 5. Robert and Linda got 3 each, plus massive fines and restitution orders. The life insurance company sued them for the payout, plus damages. The loan sharks David had borrowed from were considerably less forgiving than the legal system. The court ordered them to pay back every penny I'd spent on David's debts, plus interest, plus damages for emotional distress. It would take them the rest of their lives to pay it off. If they lived that long. I didn't attend their sentencing. I'd said everything I needed to say. Instead, I was having coffee with Marcus at a cafe near his office, celebrating the end of the case. "You know," he said, studying me over his cup, "you're different than you were in law school. Stronger." "You mean more bitter?" "No." He shook his head firmly. "More yourself. Back then, you were always trying to be whoever David needed you to be. Now you're just Maya. I like it." I felt my face warm. "I like it too. Turns out I'm pretty good at being myself when I'm not too exhausted to think. So what's next?" he asked. "Going back to law school?" "Maybe. I've been thinking about it. I've been thinking about a lot of things." I met his eyes. "Thank you, Marcus, for believing me, for helping me, for caring when you didn't have to." "Maya." His voice was soft. "I always cared. Even back in school I cared. But you were with David, and I respected that. And then you disappeared, and I didn't know how to reach you. When you called me that day asking for help, I was just glad you remembered me." We looked at each other across the table, and something warm and hopeful unfurled in my chest. Something that had nothing to do with revenge or justice or proving anyone wrong. "I'm glad I remembered you too," I said quietly. We talked for another hour, about school and work and life and everything we'd missed in the years we'd been apart. When we finally left the cafe, Marcus walked me to my car, and there was a moment where we both hesitated, not quite ready to say goodbye. "Would you want to have dinner sometime?" he asked. "No case talk, no stress. Just dinner." "I'd like that," I said, and meant it. 6 months later, I re-enrolled in law school. Marcus helped me study, brought me coffee during late-night cramming sessions, made me laugh when the stress got too heavy. We took it slow, both of us careful with something that felt precious and real in a way nothing in my life had felt in a very long time. I specialized in fraud law. Turned out I had a personal investment in helping people who'd been scammed by the people they trusted most. On the 1-year anniversary of David's arrest, I visited his parents in prison. Not to gloat, not to rage, just to look them in the eye one more time. Linda looked old now, her hair grey, her face lined. Robert had lost weight, his prison uniform hanging loose on his frame. They both looked shocked to see me. "What do you want?" Robert asked, his voice hostile and afraid in equal measure. "Nothing," I said simply. "I don't want anything from either of you. I never did. I just wanted you to know that I'm happy now. I'm finishing law school. I'm helping other people who've been where I was. I'm building a life that has nothing to do with your family or your lies or your manipulation." "We're sorry," Linda whispered. "Maya, we're so sorry." "No, you're not," I said, not unkindly. "You're sorry you got caught. But it doesn't matter anymore. You're not part of my life anymore. None of you are. And that's the best thing that ever happened to me." I turned and walked out of that prison, and I didn't look back. Outside, Marcus was waiting by his car, holding 2 cups of coffee from our favourite cafe. He smiled when he saw me, and I smiled back, feeling lighter than I had in years. "How'd it go?" he asked, handing me a cup. "Good," I said. "Really good. I don't need to do that again." "Good." He paused. "I got the results back on that case we were building, the one with the elderly couple who got scammed by their financial advisor." "And?" "We've got him. Same pattern as yours. Fake investments, fake returns, using trust to drain them dry. He's done this to at least 6 other people." But we got him, Maya. Because you knew exactly what to look for. I felt that fierce satisfaction again, the one that came from using everything I'd learned the hard way to help someone else avoid the same pain. Then let's get to work, I said. We drove back to the office together, already planning strategy, already building the case. And somewhere in the middle of discussing evidence and witness testimony, Marcus reached over and took my hand, and I let him. I thought about David sometimes, about the man I'd thought I'd married and the reality I'd been too naive to see. I thought about the year I'd spent as a ghost in my own life, working myself to death for people who saw me as nothing more than a convenient tool. But mostly I thought about the future. About the cases I would win and the people I would help, and the life I was building that belonged entirely to me. I'd thought losing David had destroyed me. Turned out it was the best thing that ever happened, because I didn't lose him. I lost my chains. And everything I'd built since then was mine, earned through my own strength, my own intelligence, my own refusal to stay down. They'd counted on me being too broken to fight back. They'd gambled that I would just accept my fate, keep my head down, keep serving them until I had nothing left to give. They'd gambled wrong, and I'd won everything.